Hello, this is Jessi Sletten from Empowering Postpartum, and welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free, and Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. I am so happy to be here. We are celebrating our 25th episode today of Empowering Postpartum TV, and I'm just so thrilled that we've been able to bring such valuable information to all of you amazing parents and parents to be out there. And for those who don't know me, again, my name is Jessi Sletten, and I am your host and your postpartum prep coach to help you find and feel prepared, confident, and all of the things that you want to feel for your postpartum experience before birth so that you can feel calm and cozy for your fourth semester. And my special guest today, I'm so excited to introduce, is Larissa Hazell. She's a seasoned nanny of 14 years and the founder of UK-based Childcare Navigator. So good morning, Larissa. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
Yes, I guess it's afternoon for you, right?
It is. It's like 5 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, wait a minute. She's like, good morning. It's like dinner time for me, but thank you for joining. This is going to be such a great conversation because we're going to be talking about something that I feel is really, really relevant for so many parents, expecting parents. And that's really this big, overwhelming decision on how we can find trustworthy care for our children once we're ready to go back to work or whatever our situation is for our family. How we can find care that we feel safe and comfortable with, what type of care fits our family best. And I know you've got lots of really great nuggets for us on how we can go about doing that. But before we spill the tea, I would love for you to just share a little bit about who you are, your journey, how you got into this work, because we'd love to get to know you before we dive in.
Of course. So as you said, I've been a nanny for 14 years. I have worked with a huge, diverse range of families, from single parents to families where their first language isn't English, to families with premature twins, with an older child. A huge range of different families who have really different childcare needs.
Yes.
And because of the type of person I am, I'm really particular about the type of family that I'll work for. I'm really passionate about making sure I'll only work with a family where our values and our beliefs align. Because it's really important to me that we work together as a team. I'm not just somebody who goes into a family and I'm like, right, this is who I am, this is how I work. I really believe in that teamwork and essentially becoming a third parent to the child.
Yeah.
So because of that, I've met so many different parents, because I can interview for months and turn down multiple roles and things like that to make sure I get the perfect family.
Yeah.
And so doing that, I've met a lot of parents who have actually been looking for a nanny, but haven't realized that it's not actually the right type of childcare for them. They don't know why it's the wrong care until I start talking to them about what it is that they actually need and how a different type of childcare provider would meet their needs better than what a nanny could.
Yeah.
And I sort of looked at this and I was like, I'm actually helping a lot of people on an individual basis when I'm only going into their home. And there's so many more people out there who I could be helping.
Yeah.
And, I know especially for first-time parents who, especially if they don't have a network of other new mums or, their siblings having had children as well, that they might not really know what the different types of childcare are and all of that. So I sort of decided, let me provide people with this support, with this guidance of how to find the right childcare for their child and their family.
I love that so much because it is a very individualized process because each family's needs are going to be different, like you said, so it's important that and the child as well, right? So like maybe the parent thinks that what they want is a daycare center or, you know, a Montessori type situation of care, and then it turns out that that's not a great fit for their child. And so it's really interesting how I speaking from personal experience when I was a first time mom, like I had a background in family development and, childcare and, just child development and all these things. And so I had this idea of what I knew I was looking for, what I wanted and everything. But even having that experience, it's still so overwhelming because there's so many options. And then in some places, there's not very many options. And so you're like, what do I do in those situations? Or, and where I'm from, like we have quality care, but it's very expensive and you have to get on a wait list for like 6 months to get your child into the program. And so there's all these things that you just don't really know until you are in the thick of it, like researching and doing all this stuff. So I think what you're doing is amazing because that provides that gap or that bridge within the gap to help parents make this an easier process instead of just like, oh my gosh, feeling so overwhelmed, trying to research, trying to do all these things. And, having that resource is so valuable. So I'd love for you, if you could just tell us a little bit about how that works. Like, is it specific to the child's like care that you have locally, or is it more of like a model that kind of works through what the family needs and what they're looking for, and then it kind of tells them what type of childcare would be best for their situation?
Yeah, so I work sort of on a one-to-one basis and I do masterclasses.
Yeah.
And so when I work on a one-to-one basis with the family, we talk about what it is that there are their essential needs. So the hours that they need for childcare, the days that they need, if they need set days or if they need flexible days, if they're, a doctor or a fireman or someone, and they need the flexible hours and they work a rota, so their weeks won't always be the same.
Right.
That can affect the type of childcare that will be available to them.
Right.
So we talk about all of that sort of stuff, and then we talk through who they are as a family, what they believe in, what is really important to them, what are their values? Are they, to them, is it really important that their child attends a really diverse childcare setting? Is that not important to them? Is it important that they are attending a setting where they follow a Montessori philosophy or a different type of philosophy? Or does none of that matter to them?
Right.
It's important that their child has as much access to the outdoors as the child would like.
Right.
Or are they not bothered and they're happy if their child goes outside between 1 and 2 p.m., for example, for that class's outside time?
Right.
We talk about all those sort of things that make up what is the most important things to them as parents. And then obviously we talk about the child and what their child is like and how their child, obviously this is if the child is here. If they're, pregnant, then, we can only talk about how it is they want to parent. But, we talk about, how their child is. Some babies that when they're really little, even at that point, they're like, I'm an outside baby. I need to be out a lot. And therefore maybe like a forest school type setting would be a better option for them. If they're, they want lots of social skills, going out and going to museums and going to the zoo and doing play dates and things like that, then maybe something like a nanny would be a better option. So we really discuss all the different areas on what makes up childcare basically and how the different providers work. Because I want parents to understand, if you use a childminder, this is how a childminder will work. it's different to how a nursery work, and it is different to how a nanny will work. So I want a parent to be comfortable sending their child somewhere where they're going to be working in a way that they're happy with.
Yeah, no, and I think that as first-time parents, we probably don't even really know that there's all these differences in options out there. We just think of the traditional things, like we might be aware of nannies that can come into the home, or, there's the daycare centers or the preschool type centers. But the truth of the matter is there's so much variety in childcare options. And it's really, I love your point where you want to find the right fit for your goals for your child, for your philosophies and values, and all of these things, going through that list for yourself while you are trying to find this care can be really, like, that's important. Like, that lays the foundation of finding the right fit for childcare. And I think that that's something that can be very helpful for us to do ahead of time. In pregnancy, we might not know the baby per se, like you were saying, we might not know their personality or what their specific needs might be, but we know what our parenting philosophies are, how we would like our discipline to happen with our children, how much we want our babies interacting with other things or whatever, and so having those discussions ahead of time, I think, can be very beneficial for, you to be able to figure out, okay, these are the type of programs I'm looking for. And then from there, you can kind of see what your options are. And I think that that's a really important piece to have for my perspective. I'm a postpartum planning coach. So having that be a part of your planning, if you're going back to work or you're going to need childcare in some sort of capacity, doing that research ahead of time will save you a lot of headache and stress.
Absolutely. And here in the UK, there's a lot of areas where childcare is limited, and people are putting their child's name down on waitlist before the baby's even born.
Yep.
So, some people are getting to their baby being 9 months and they're thinking, oh, I might send my child to nursery when they're a year. And then they're finding out at that point that they should have had their name down a minimum of 6 months ago.
Right.
And then they're getting into the stressful situation of not knowing where to send their child, because the only things that are available are options that are not aligning with who they are as parents.
Yes.
And so coming back to the point of, let's think about this sooner. Let's think about, having these sort of conversations as well with, if there's a partner with you and baby, allows you to have those conversations of how you want to be as parents together. A lot of parents, they don't really talk about how they want to be as parents. They don't talk about how they want to discipline. They don't talk about, as weird as it sounds, their philosophies around food. Are they going to do baby-led weaning? Do they want to do puree weaning? Do they care if the children run around and eat, or do the children have to sit at the table?
Right.
Are they, you have to eat your savory food first and you have to finish it before you can have any sweet food?
Right.
Or are you giving your yogurt, your fruit, and your savory food all at the same time, and it's up to the child to eat as in how they want?
Right, right. It's amazing how many of those nuances there really are. And having that time and space to be able to sit down as partners and ensure you're aligned, you're open and honest about what your beliefs are and thoughts are, and don't assume that you are on the same page. Like, that is always my advice with the couples I work with. It's like, you may think that you both agree, like, oh, we're totally on the same page when it comes to discipline, or we absolutely, agree with how we want to handle X, Y, and Z situation. But the truth is that a lot of times it's not the case, or one person doesn't understand how important something is to their partner versus, oh, that didn't seem like a big deal to me. Like, okay, and then there's a lot of room for conflict and for miscommunication. And then it also kind of lends into this idea of the inequitable share of parenting load, because it's like, oh my gosh, if this one parent is the only one making these decisions or is the only one taking the lead, that becomes kind of the foundation of the parenthood, right, throughout the whole process, from infants to teenager. And so I think these conversations, to your point, they're so critical beforehand because it can create so much strength in your relationship as well as in your family's foundation moving forward, because you're able to communicate about these things, align the philosophies, figure out, okay, if we are mismatched on this one area, how can we come up with a compromise or a solution where we both feel comfortable? And you have a lot more time and energy to have these discussions before the baby is here. Oh my goodness. Yes. I love that. I'd love to hear if you have like a couple of like common things that you recommend parents definitely hit on, which I think we've both said the discipline thing is a really big one. I love that you mentioned food. Do you have any other ones that like maybe would be a surprise to like a new parent or a first time parent where they're like, oh man, I didn't even think about having to talk about that topic or whatever? Because I think that would be really eye-opening and helpful for people who are watching.
So something that actually comes up in my own relationship is I'm quite a homebody. I'm quite happy to spend time at home and the outside time just being playing out in the garden.
Right.
I can do that for days on end. Whereas my husband and actually my child as well prefer to get out. Even if it's just going out to the library or out to the playground, they both need to be out of the house once a day. And so at times that can cause a little bit of conflict for us because I'm like, oh, let's just have a day at home, and they're like, we need out of the house.
Right. Absolutely, yeah.
So that comes into the childcare sort of stuff too, because some places are like, we'll just stay in if it's raining, and some places are like, even if it's raining, those all-in-one waterproof outfits are getting put on, the wellies are getting put on, we are out there. And if they're babies, the rain cover goes on over the buggy and they're still getting out. So just like at home, they have different philosophies in childcare settings as well with what they do with indoors and outdoors. And another thing that I think that parents should try and hit on, and equally with their childcare provider, is about how they talk about the issues that they have. Something will come up, maybe a child does something and you react in one way, and you might think about it later and you might say to your partner, like, this happened and this is how I dealt with it in this situation. But was this the right thing to do? Maybe I could have done it in a different way. And being able to have the open and honest communication with each other, whether that be a childcare provider or with your partner, I think is absolutely critical, because you're saying to yourself and you're saying to the other people, I'm not perfect. I won't always make the right decision in the moment. But I'm happy to talk to you and, talk about how we could do it better in the future. Whereas some people, they just hold on to that and they go, I know I did it wrong, but I don't want to talk about it. And then they're not able to grow and learn from that moment. And so I think it's really important that partners are able to come together and talk about it together, because that way they can support each other through the struggle, because parenting is not easy. There's so many struggles. We have babies and toddlers who don't sleep through the night. The sleep deprivation, I wish for me that it ended once he turned 1, and sleeping better apparently to textbooks. Reality for me at least is that's definitely not happening.
I know, right?
Very real.
Yes. No, I think that that's a really great thing to keep in mind, because, I always say, like, we want to enter into parenthood as a team and together, right? And it's so important that we can also approach parenthood, motherhood, any of these things as this is a learned skill. And we are constantly going to be refining this skill and learning from mistakes that we make, right? And being able to be very, I guess, like, not so hard on ourselves, where we're like, okay, I have to know everything about how to feed my baby the right way, or I have to know everything about how to support their sleep, all these different things that we just assume we'll know because we're the parent and we should know this. And it should be just this ingrained instinctual thing. There's a lot to be said about following intuition, but it's also okay if you don't know what you're doing, because guess what? Nobody really knows what we're doing, right? Like, we are learning as we go. And I think that it lends into this topic that we're talking about of, if you do make a mistake or you want to change the way maybe you're approaching certain things with your kids, having that open conversation and communication with your partner is really, really big. And that translates into care, because having an open relationship and conversation, communication with your care provider is so, so important, because you should feel comfortable bringing them things that you might need adjusted or changed, or and vice versa. If your care provider is noticing something about your child, you want them to be able to come to you, right? And be able to talk about this and have these conversations. So I think that that's a really great thing to kind of keep in mind when you are looking for the childcare, that you feel is a good fit. And then also approaching this together as a team, like you and your partner, really figuring out what is it that is important to us and how can we learn and make changes when we do want to pivot from what we thought we wanted. And now, oh, that doesn't actually work for this child. Like, I have 2 kids, right? A lot of things that worked with my first child isn't working with my second. So it's like having to be, open enough and flexible enough to make those changes, and giving yourself grace through it, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. And sort of following on with that too, is I think it's also really important that regardless of the age of your child, that you're able to apologize to your child.
Yes.
You're able to say to them, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have done that, whether that be raise your voice, whether that be get angry, whether, whatever it was, and say, I know I shouldn't do that. And this is what I should do next time.
Yeah.
Because not only are you apologizing to your child to let them know that you've done something wrong, you've also shown your child that if they're in the same situation, what they could do instead.
Right.
Whether that's say, I should have taken a deep breath and counted to 3 before I did something, or maybe I should have gone and had some quiet time, or something. You're doing that to show the child what they can do,
right,
to help regulate their emotions. So it's all about that mirroring behavior.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that modeling piece is so huge. That's how our kids learn. They don't learn from what we're telling them necessarily. They learn from observing how we handle certain situations and how we are moving through life, right? And so being able to, I think, apologize is a really big, important thing that a lot of our generations before us, like, that was not something that they did. Like, you don't apologize to your kids because you're the grown up, you know what you're doing, you're in charge. And I love that we are trying to kind of break that down now and say they're human beings, they're little people in their own right, and they have the right to be apologized to if something wasn't right, and something that, you need to own your own behavior as a parent, and being able to do that recovery piece while also modeling, like, and changing your own behavior so that they can see, okay, you can make mistakes, but you can also grow and change, and seeing the way that, you handle things is really powerful. And I think the same can be said when you're looking for childcare. Like, if that's a really important thing for you, ask the child care provider that you're interviewing, like, how do you handle when something doesn't go the right way? Like, what is your philosophies or approaches to certain things and discipline and all these things? Like, don't be afraid to ask all the questions. And I think that that's one thing that I learned from being a new parent, to a more seasoned parent is like, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Like, bring all your questions, ask them, make sure you get the answers. And you're the parent, right? Like, you need to feel comfortable with the childcare that you choose. And you won't unless you really just interview and ask all the questions and make sure that things are aligned.
That's it. And that's the only way you're going to know if
Yeah.
they're going to be the right type of childcare for you is by asking all the questions.
Yeah.
And honestly, if that means you're asking them over 100 questions,
Right.
then do it.
Yeah.
Because it is your child.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be with the childcare provider potentially for 40, 50 hours a week.
Right.
That's a long time. And you want to make sure that they are getting the type of care while they're away from you that is as similar to the care that you provide them.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's the perfect way to say it, because you want that to be a seamless home life to, childcare, that is consistent for your child too. Like, so that the same way that you would handle something that needs to be corrected, you want that reflected in how, your childcare provider is doing that, because it's going to be that consistency for your child that they can learn and grow in the way that they need. And I think, like, to your point, don't be afraid to ask 100 questions. That's what needs to be happening. And if a childcare provider is uncomfortable with that, or they're annoyed or whatever, then that's an answer for itself, right? Like, okay, well, this isn't going to be a good fit because I know I can't bring my questions to you,
Exactly.
Once my child is here. And, on the kind of the flip side of that too, like for me, when I was looking for care, something that was really important to me was the open communication throughout, the day or at the end of the day. I need to know, like, how did the day go? Like, were there things that I need to be aware of that we can kind of follow up back at home about? And this is, of course, for older children, right? Like my son's 4. But with babies even too, like, do they keep track of how well they're eating for you during the day, and it's important, especially when we have infants. It was, for me, like, I think it's really hard for us to not be there during, when we would want to be maybe with our kids. And so having that communication and knowing that, oh, okay, I can have this log of what's going on with how many times the baby took their bottle and how many ounces they drank or how many dirty diapers they've had. And, finding that provider that's just like what they do, right? And that makes you feel comfortable because they are willing to communicate and it's a part of their standard practice to do so. That was important to me. And maybe that's not important to some other parents, but like, I knew that was important to me. And so that is something that I always, ask whenever I'm looking at a new childcare, center or whatever. Like, what's your policy on communicating with parents? Like, whether it's, he got hurt or there was, a little bit of a scuffle with another child or whatever, like, I want to be in the loop. So is that something that you can provide for me?
It's so important because a child, especially when they're little, they're not able to communicate with you.
Yes.
So they can't say to you, oh, Mum, I need another bottle because it's been 3 hours since I had a bottle. And,
right.
Oh, my nappy hasn't been changed for 3 hours and it's been quite full for the whole time. And now I've got a bit of sore bottom.
Right.
So having that communication, it really, really is essential. Yeah. Especially because as they get that little bit older, they will start having things like they might start hitting, they might start grabbing toys, they might start pulling hair, they might start removing themselves from activities and just going and sitting in a far corner playing by themselves. That might be unusual behavior for the parents to hear about, right? Because they might not ever be like that at home. But to me, if that's a new behavior at a childcare setting, it's happening because of something. There's something going on that needs to change within the setting with, for the child to feel comfortable there. But the parents won't know unless there is that open communication, which is daily, which is regular.
Right.
So you can follow what's going on, so you can make the changes between home and nursery to make sure that that child is comfortable, that they are confident, and they are willing to engage and participate and explore the setting to aid their development as best as possible.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I think it helps too with you understanding, like, maybe making adjustments to what your child needs once you're home, right? So like if the baby didn't get down for their nap, their afternoon nap that they really needed, that's going to affect home life, right? That's going to affect behavior at home. It's going to affect your child's just overall, well-being. And so it's important that, if that's an important piece for you, you want to find a provider that is very open with those kind of communications and letting you know, like, what's going on. The pulse of the day was this, or this happened, after they ate their first bottle or whatever it might be. Like, that communication piece is so important. And I feel like certain childcare, I don't know what you call, like, different types of childcare is going to fit and suit that a little bit better. So like if you have a daycare center that has a lot of infants and the ratio is like being stretched, right, from caregiver to the amount of babies in the room, that might be a more challenging thing for them to be able to like keep track of that. And so if that's not going to be a good fit for you, that's a good indicator that, okay, I need to probably look at something else, like a different type of care, because that's just not going to help me feel good, feel safe and trusting, and knowing that my baby's being cared for and I'm being communicated about their care the way I need to feel confident in who's taking care of my baby. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And this is the thing, is there are various types of childcare available. So you don't have to just look at a daycare centre or just a nanny, because there are different types. And, even if you look at 10 different daycares, they're all going to be set up and run in a different way. They're not going to be the same. So even if you go to one and you really dislike how they're organised and they do things, go to another and go to another, because then you'll start to see that there really is a range of possibilities out there, and you will be able to find a childcare solution that you are happy with.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'd love for you to talk maybe a little bit about that, because I know, like, as first-time parents, we probably know about nannies and we probably know about childcare centers and maybe even in-home daycare, programs that might be available. But, what are some of the other, like, out-of-the-box type of childcare that you've seen or that you've come across that might be, something that somebody doesn't know about? And it's not, of course, going to be available in all areas, but just to kind of give some idea of variety of what kind of childcare is out there, and that you do have options sometimes to, veer away from some of the more traditional childcare support.
Yeah, so it often comes down to places that follow a set philosophy.
Yeah.
So forest schools, especially in the UK, are becoming a more common type of setting. And they are really fantastic for some families and for some children, because they either are fully outdoors or most of the time they're spent outdoors, and they might have some sort of indoor space. I know that their indoor space is like a teepee, which is set up with, and then that's got like natural resources, like all their toys are like loose play and wooden and things like that. And the way that they play with the children is all about just exploring the natural world. It's about noticing and observing how nature around us changes and how we can engage with the changes of nature around us. And then Montessori and Steiner, they have different types of philosophies as well in terms of how they approach teaching. So Montessori is, it's very, very common now. We see it a lot of places, and I would say a lot of places that say that they're Montessori, they will take parts of it. A lot of places aren't fully Montessori based in the way that they are set up. So if you are wanting a Montessori based provider, really talk to them about how they bring that philosophy into their teaching, because some will bring in parts of it, and then some will bring in like everything. And yeah, so it's about how much you want to delve into that. And then in terms of like, if we then go on to a nanny, a lot of people think, oh yeah, a nanny, fantastic, they'll just come to my home, they'll look after my child. But actually there are so many different types of nannies. So just to run off some of the nanny roles that I have had, is I have been what is called a proxy parent. So I have had care of children from a Sunday night through to a Friday night, because the mother worked in a different city. So that's one type. So you can have 24-hour care, and you can either be there. Some people have 24-hour care and they are home, but they've just got very full-on jobs that they can't commit to set working hours. And some work away a lot. You can have a nanny live in with you. You can have a nanny out. You could have a nanny who maybe you've got older children, and so you'd like a nanny PA who will then organise parties. They might organise your family travel. They might do all your present shopping and wrap all your Christmas presents for you. Help run your home, deal with tradesmen and all of that sort of stuff. So you're not having to take time off work to be home to deal with a plumber. You have a nanny housekeeper as well. Some families even will have a head nanny and then have a junior nanny under that head nanny. Usually when there's 2 or more children. So that's when, they're able to then split off, and the children are able to have one-on-one time. So there's so many different types of nanny as well. So it's really important that, if you want to go down the route of having a nanny, you think about what is the care that you really want? What sort of other additional help would you ideally like the person to be able to provide as well? My apologies, I just need to turn my charger on.
No, you're fine. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, because, it all comes back to the beginning of our conversation. What do you need? What are your family's needs? What are your family's philosophies and beliefs, and then finding the care that matches that. And I don't want to take you off route, but I had a question that popped into my mind that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking as well. Like, let's say we figure out what type of approach we want, what type of care we're looking for, what we want aligned as far as beliefs and discipline and philosophies. And then we have to talk about the other aspect, which is the budget, right? And so many families struggle with the financial aspect. But I think that there's a lot of creative things that we can do that I've seen, at least in Colorado, something that started becoming popular was something called a nanny co-op. And so there's like those kind of options where I know some families came together, they had one nanny and they brought their children to that location where the nanny was going to be that week. And, they all helped pay for that one nanny. And it was kind of like this co-op where everybody worked together and they shared the care so that it was more affordable. So there's that kind of aspect too. And I don't know if you have any, suggestions or different ways that people can go about getting quality care that they trust but that they also can afford. So I don't know if you have any like tips and tricks around that piece.
So obviously every country is going to be different when it comes to this aspect, but always have a look at what support you can get from the government.
Yeah.
You know, often governments will be able to provide different types of support to help pay for childcare. So I would always recommend that families have a look into what is available, what can they access. You know, often it's also determined by what you earn. So over here in the UK, there's ways around being able to reduce your income as such in order to access more government funding by just putting more money into your pension. So if you're not needing that additional money to live, you know, week to week, then maybe that can be an option that you can look at, you know, at least in the UK. But always have a look at what government support is available. And then, you know, as you say, in the UK too, we have that similar thing where nannies are able to work for two different families at the same time to bring that cost down. And also look at the different options. So a lot of people I know will just automatically think, oh, a daycare or a nursery.
Right.
You know, whereas maybe a in-home type childcare, like a childminder, they might actually provide the same type of care that you're looking for, but that might come at a reduced cost compared to a daycare's costs. So I would always recommend, even if you think that you want a daycare, and this is a really specific reason why you don't want a childminder, definitely go and, you know, look into it as an option if that's going to be an option that could reduce your childcare costs.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. That's a really great tip because I think another thing too, you know, that is important to think about is, you know, how can maybe if it's not at the government level, like maybe the community resources that are around you, right? So sometimes there's, you know, supports and programs out there that can help, you know, with childcare costs, or there's certain programs that you can enroll in to get access to the childcare that otherwise you wouldn't. Also, like if you have a certain job, look into their benefits, because sometimes employers, not very often in the United States, unfortunately, but some do offer, you know, ways to help you offset some of those costs that you need to be able to do your job, right, and to be able to come to work. So just really kind of leaning into the resources available and around you, you know, even looking into like churches or whatever, if that's an option or something that you feel comfortable with. There's always different ways to go about it. It's just really being willing to do the research and digging in to see what is available for your community and around you, for sure.
Absolutely. And then the other thing you can also do is look at your job and talk to your employer. You know, there's some people who are able to reduce their working week down to 4 days and just do longer days. So some couples might be able to both work a 4-day week, but only need childcare then for 3 days because they have different days off during the week, which can be a fantastic way to be able to reduce your childcare bill. And also allows you to have one-on-one time with your child, which is fantastic. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, no, I love that suggestion because I know for like with my child's preschool, you pay per day, right? And so it's like if you go for 2 hours or you go for the full 8-hour day, like you're still paying for that day. So, you know, like you said, if you reduce it by a couple days a week where you don't need that childcare, that can save you a lot of money. And so I think some employers are not flexible, but more and more after the COVID pandemic, I feel a lot of employers are moving in that direction where they're trying to be more accommodating to employees, working from home situations, things like that too can really be helpful with reducing childcare costs too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been so helpful. I feel like we've covered a lot of really great tips and tricks on how we can kind of navigate, how we can feel good and comfortable with the childcare that we end up selecting, and how to go about doing that. Really just leaning into what your beliefs are, what your philosophies are, what you're looking for in a care provider, and like the philosophy or setup that center or whatever childcare program might be. So those are all really, really good tips, I think, when it comes to making this decision. And then at the beginning, I want to reiterate what we talked about with trying to do this ahead of time, because if you're in a pinch, it can be so, so stressful trying to figure out how to, find a program that fits and feels good, but also meets the needs of like needing to get your child the care that they need. It's so much easier to do that if you're putting in the time and the research, a few months ahead of time at least, so that you can, have that freedom to be able to take your time on making this decision, because it is a big decision. It is a really big decision.
It is a really big decision. And, I'll say from a nanny point of view, I've had families come to me where, they've done settling in sessions with their child and they've just gone, it's really not the right setting.
Yeah.
And it's because when they went and they viewed, they didn't ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I can't emphasize that enough. Please ask the questions. It is the most important thing. And you don't want to be, a week away from returning to work and then suddenly being in this position where the childcare provider that you had selected just isn't right, and you're scrambling around to try and find a different provider that you are going to be happy with, because you need to trust the provider. You need to be confident in the provider, because you being confident and trusting the provider, your child will feel that.
Yes.
They will sense that from you, which will help your child feel confident going in. Mm-hmm. They will feel comfortable being away from you and being able to explore the setting that they're in. And that is ultimately what we want for your child.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. It's true. They can really feel that stress or reservation or anxiety or fear, if that's how we're feeling, and it's already going to be an adjustment for your kiddo. So you want to make it as seamless and comfortable as possible for them. And it starts with finding the right care and being comfortable yourself with who you have selected. And I will say, if you feel like everything looked good and then all of a sudden it's just there's something that's off, or it's not actually working out really well for your family, don't be afraid to change. You don't have to stay. It might be harder because you're trying to find a different care provider while you're still in a different, in this care that, you were able to find. But similar to like any other thing that we talk about with, you don't have to stick with something that's not working. So just, like if you need to change things, that you are the parent and you can make that decision. And, it's an important thing that it's a good fit and that it's working once you're in it too. So I think that's important too.
Absolutely. Even if it is the best nursery around with glowing reviews, which is exactly a situation that I've had with a client before. They went to a nursery that was really hard to get into. And at some point, things changed and they were no longer happy with that setting. And so they made the decision that, no, we're not happy. We're going to pull the children out. Yes, we know that everyone else is still really happy with the setting, but it no longer aligns with what we want.
Yes.
So they did pull their children out, and, exactly the same as what you've just said. Don't feel like you have to stay if it is no longer working for you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been very, very helpful. And I want to just thank you for just sharing all your wisdom and, giving these great tips and what you should be looking for in childcare, that different types of childcare that's out there. It's just unbelievable how many new things are coming out, with how we approach childcare and learning and all these things. So there is a match for you out there and for your family and for your child. And to your point, Larissa, you just have to ask the questions. You just have to be open and honest with yourself and your partner and the childcare provider. Just communicate, communicate, communicate. And that's how you're going to be able to feel good and feel like you are in a trustworthy place for your child to get the care that they need. And I think that that's the bottom line. If you take anything from this whole conversation, like ask the questions, don't be afraid to, and communicate.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, before we run out of time here, I'd love for you to just kind of share, where can people get connected with you? Where do you offer your services as far as the childcare navigator piece? I'd love for you to just be able to share with our audience.
Yeah, of course. So I have a group on Facebook that everyone's welcome to come and join.
Great.
I provide support in there. Ask as many questions as you like. I'm there to support families to make sure they've got all their questions answered, so they're confident with their childcare choice. And that group is called Navigating Childcare Choices.
Okay, great.
And then my website, childcarenavigator.co.uk. But as you will have heard from this conversation, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, all of this will be applicable to you. So
yes,
do come and join the group, and yeah.
And I think it's great because the group kind of offers that peer support too, where you can feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this journey. There's other parents who are going through this, and kind of having that support can really, really be helpful as well. So I love that you have that available. So everybody definitely go check that Facebook group out. I think it's a great resource. And before we go, I just want to remind you all that my Beyond Birth postpartum prep course is available, and you can actually get access to that on my Instagram, link in bio. So head over there. This course is designed to walk you through step-by-step of creating your own custom and comprehensive postpartum support plan before baby arrives, kind of like what we were talking about with childcare. You want to get this done before you're in the trenches. So if this is something that you want, so you feel supported, you feel nourished, you feel like you can be present, body, mind, and soul, because you've done the work ahead of time and you have the supports and resources set up, then this is the perfect program for you. And as a special gift, I want to offer anybody watching the show today 50% off. You can use the coupon code EPTV. And you can grab this course for $47 with that coupon. It's a steal. And remember, the show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. And thank you again so much, Larissa. It's been great. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah.